All right. Thank you so much, Diane. I'm just really honored to be here, and I just love talking to other rose enthusiasts or plant enthusiasts of any kind. I wanted to tell you a little bit about why this was always my dream job. When Knockout was first being introduced in the early 2000s, I was working for Blue Seal, and I went on a tour, and one of the tour stops was at Star Rose's. At the time, it was Conrad Pyle. It was a finished container company, but they also did, where they were still breeding and introducing roses. But it was the first time that I had seen um, product development in horticulture, and I just fell in love that day. And that day, I said, someday I'm going to work for Star Roses and Plants. So that was a really long time ago, and a lot of different experiences happened in between. And so I just feel really grateful that I had this opportunity to work at Star. And sometimes people, when they say all you do is roses, that's got to be pretty easy, right? And I look at them and I say, that's so funny because it's not. It's beautiful, beautifully intricate and difficult and detailed. And the passion behind the people is incredible. I love history, and so I'm going to start off with just a little history lesson. So I'm going to advance my slide here. So I'm just gonna share with you just a little bit of the background of Star Roses and Plants and kind of the changes over the years. So, we just celebrated 126-year anniversary. Pinpointing the exact year that Star Roses and Plants began is actually kind of difficult. It's a very complex story with lots of different people purchasing the farmland and different people coming into the business, but the official date that we use is when it became the Conrad and Jones Company. But the history of the land that is on in West Grove, Pennsylvania goes all the way before the Revolutionary War. It used to be Harmony Grove Farm, which was one of the premier botanical gardens in the country at that time. If you've ever been to West Grove, as soon as you get off the exit, it says "Welcome to." I think the sign says "Welcome to the birthplace of American horticulture." So it's really interesting that there's just a rich history there and a lot of passionate people that developed the land and the business. So when it became the Conrad and Jones Company, in 1987, you can see the cover of our first catalog. Shockingly, it's not a rose. It's actually a canna. So at the time, they were the #1 canna breeder and introducer of that type of plant in the US at the time. That's what they were known for. And they were also known for their roses as well. But you can see the new canna bears, Maiden's Blush, and Philadelphia. So kind of an interesting history, but a long history of breeding. So how, just a couple like kind of key moments over the years. In 1898, that's when Robert Pyle joined the company. And he really brought a lot of interesting marketing ideas to the business. So there's a lot of firsts that happened during that time. First for not only roses, but for the horticulture industry in general. One of those firsts is the development of relationships in Europe with breeders and introducing their varieties in the US. One of the most well-known ones that I'm sure, very familiar with is the Peace Rose. And I actually have a really cool video that I'm going to show you, the story behind the Peace Rose. But you can see here some of the different kind of handouts and things we used to do. We have literally boxes and boxes of these things. It's kind of fun to dig through and see them. But what I want to show you next, hopefully this works. There is a book, and we just got this book. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is a rose named Peace, And it's by Barbara Carol Roberts, and it's illustrated by Bagram Ivatulin. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correct. You have to have this book. If you're a rosarian, I'm sure you have lots of, just like me, you probably have a ton of different rose books in your library. This is a beautiful children's book that tells the true story of really how the peace rose came to be and how Star and Mayon, how their relationship kind of developed. So this little clip is about 5 minutes long. I hope that's okay. I'm going to show you a few little videos today. This is probably the longest one, but there's some reading involved because the reading of the story is on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. So here we go. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I love that story. Um, so the thing that I love most about roses is the story behind them. So if you don't have a peace rose in your garden, you should, because it really symbolized a lot of things, and it's an important, definitely an important rose here at Star Roses and Plants. Some other really cool firsts that happened from Star Roses is the trademark of our name. Trademarking plants was a fairly revolutionary idea at the time, and getting our name trademarked um, was one of those kind of firsts. In 1930, the Plant Patent Act was passed, and we began being able to patent our roses. So you can see some of the packaging, and again some of the covers of the magazine there. Robert Pyle established the All-American Rose Selections in 1938, and some of those winners that are still grown today, Peace, Mr. Lincoln, Carefree Delight, Knockout, Bonica, and Portrait, are just some of those award winners. Mr. Lincoln still continues to this day, and Peace, to be some of our largest sellers at Star Roses. We were also the first East Coast container nursery. We also introduced the first climbing rose and won the gold medal of Bagatelle. We introduced Sonia, which is the first rose suited to greenhouse and garden production. Sunblaze was really kind of a breakthrough as we were the first to the market with miniatures. So Sunblaze kind of brought together the breeding between miniatures and floribundas. And then, of course, the Knockout family of roses and Drift. And the final slide about the history, and then we'll get into a little more some other things, is just talking about succession and acquisition and transition. So, the Hutton family owned the company for 3 generations. In 2015, Steve Hutton sold the company to Ball Horticultural, which is the largest horticulture company in the world. They acquired which is our official name is Conrad Pilot Company. What we do business as Star Roses and Plants. After that, we purchased Brazelberries and we rebranded it as Bushel and Berry. In 2017, we acquired the distribution rights to the Cordes line of roses from New Flora Plant. And then currently Brad Yoder is our president. So just some really exciting things happening at Star. Being a part of such a large corporation like Ball gives us a lot of resources to be able to pursue new breeding objectives, and also to have some more firepower in the creation of an RRD resistant rose. So lots of amazing things are coming from that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the breeders and working with them and some of their objectives and how that works. So first of all, I'm going to talk about Mayon. Obviously, seeing that video hopefully gives you a deep sense of the history between our 2 companies and how important that history is to us. They are a 6th generation rose family. Currently, their Mateus Mayon is the one you see traveling all around the world. He's very active on social media, and his father is still deeply involved, and his sister as well. They're best known currently for the Romantica series of roses. They're really high petal count, fragrant roses that came out of a breeding initiative that started over 20 years ago when the floral industry in the US was collapsing and moving more toward Ecuador, Colombia, and into Kenya. It was decided then that they would begin a breeding initiative to bring the flower petal, the color, the fragrance, the vase life into the garden. And you're going to see some of those roses a little bit later in this presentation. But Romantica is part of that breeding initiative, and it's a really important one. And it took a very, very long time to be able to create a rose that is a great cut flower, but is designed and bred to be in the garden. Florist roses were never meant to be in the garden. It's a completely different breeding program at Mayon. I had a chance to visit them last year and got to see their breeding houses that are specific for the florist industry. They are bred for longer stems, flower buds that open really slow, thick petals that last. They're bred for thornless. They're not bred for disease resistance. They're meant to be put in a very highly environmentally controlled system, and they're trialed in those countries all around the world. Some other ones that they're really well known for, the Sunblaze, like we talked a little bit about earlier. Sunblaze really is a very wonderful impulsive type of item. Most miniatures do not have that greater disease resistance, and Sunblaze brought some of that floribunda, that disease resistance from floribundas into the miniature world. So you get kind of the flower power miniatures and the disease resistance from floribundas. And there's a whole lot of new varieties that we've just introduced in the last few years. You'll see a couple of them coming up in 24 at the end of the presentation. Mayon is also known for Drift. So the Drift brand is 100% Mayon breeding. And that initiative was to bring disease resistance and more flower power into, and better form and shape into ground cover roses. So they continue to have a very highly sought after, we have very specific colors we're looking for that are coming in Drift, and so there's a lot of breeding still happening to build up that brand. One of the most exciting things in the last few years has been the introduction of petite knockout. When you think of knockout, you probably think of Mr. Will Radler, and we'll certainly talk about him later because he really helped save the rose industry. Petite knockout is the very first miniature rose in the knockout series, and it truly has genetic breakthroughs. The thing's bulletproof, so that's why it deserved the knockout name. If you haven't tried a petite in your yard, you should. It's continual blooming, short and compact, super thick, glossy foliage. So it really is a breakthrough. And you're going to get to see, we actually have 5 new introductions from Mayan in 2024. So you'll see some of those. So you can see some of the breeding objectives with them. We have some other objectives that we're working with them on that we'll be bringing to market over the next 3 to 5 years that we're really excited about. So working with Mayan is an absolute pleasure. They have a couple really young breeders who see the vision and have really brought us a lot of amazing new codes down the pipeline. So I just had a chance to spend a week with them last week, and they are very passionate, and it's really an honor to work with them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Cortez. So Cortez is they're a 5-generation rose family. They're based in Germany. You can see the 3 brothers here, and I had a wonderful opportunity to go visit them this past summer and get a look for myself at their history and their genetics and where they're going, their breeding initiatives, and help talk through that. When we acquired the distribution rights from New Flora in 2017, New Flora had introduced several different series of roses from them that we continue to this day and that we are continuing to build and introduce new varieties into. Some of those you might be familiar with. Arbor Rose, which is known for its reblooming and its soft canes, so that's easily trainable. Eleganza, which is known for its disease resistance, high petal count, and Sunbelt, which is known for its aptly named. Sunbelt is if you live in a really hot area, and it's Sunbelt, they love the heat. So Sunbelt sells the best in the South and the Southwest. Colorscape is their landscape shrub varieties. If you've never had a Colorscape rose in your yard, now they're singles, but they're compact and they have really shiny, glossy foliage. They're really, really bulletproof. So we have a Colorscape that won a UC Davis irrigation trial as a Blue Ribbon winner because it's such a phenomenal grower. Parfuma is one of probably their most well-known series of roses, and that's their high petal count fragrant roses. Veranda are roses designed for containers, and Cordanas are their mini roses that you'll see in grocery stores, things like that. We have lots of new introductions coming from them in 2026 and 2027 that we're really excited about. Just wonderful people, really humble and passionate, and it's been a pleasure getting to know them and their roses, and we have a lot of really great things coming down the pipeline. Mr. Will Radler. So I also had an opportunity to spend last week with him as well in California, and he's so funny. He's a very quiet guy. I don't know if you've ever met him, but they're all rose breeders are very passionate, but he's got kind of a quiet passion. And but really, when Knockout came out in the early 2000s, it was one of those roses that people looked at and said, "That's not a rose." I had the opportunity when I visited him several times, and to see the original parent plants and to understand his ancestry of his genetics is really, really unique. And the disease resistance that he's able to obtain and the recurrent blooming that he's able to retain is what made Knockout really help and bolster the rose business. We were able to bring roses to everyone that didn't need to be sprayed or and things like that. So, you know, it's a really amazing story, and seeing his current breeding initiatives and his objectives right now, to be able to see some of that like ancestry and knockout blood coming into other types of roses. He's actually really good at breeding climbers. So I put a few on here that, you know, they're not as well known, and they should be, because they almost became knockouts. That's how disease resistant and recurrent blooming they are. So, you know, Cloud 10, Fruity Petals, High Wire Flyer are a couple of the climbers. Pearlescent is a really beautiful fragrant floribunda. And then Sitting Pretty, you probably just saw the social media post that is now, it's an AGRS winner. It's won other awards as well, but you know, Sitting Pretty is a phenomenal Radler rose. So we also have 2 new intros in 2024 that we're excited about. Dr. Jim Sproul. So I hope you have all had the pleasure of meeting this man. He's one of the most genuine people I've ever met. And actually, he was the doctor that our rose growers in California, he was their parents' doctor for years. So the rose world is a very small, tight world, right? But he lives in Bakersfield, California, and he really specializes in Houthemia crossings. But he does lots of other fun crossings too. He's most well known for his iconic series of roses. And most recently Brick House Pink, which is also a big award winner, also has a blue ribbon irrigation prize from UC Davis. He was the first breeder to breed a miniature rose good enough to be in the Sunblaze family besides Mayan. So he bred our first striped miniature rose, which is Sunblaze Candy. He has a lot of other roses on the market. One of them is Cherry Teeny. It's the one in the lower left-hand corner there. That was actually introduced through the Synergy group of growers, which is through the Plants That Work. So it's like Pride's Corner Farms, Willow A, Saunders Brothers, Over the Best. But we love the rose so much, we have introduced it into our own catalog and our own offerings. And I'm going to show you, we have a new intro from him in 2024. I had a chance to meet with Dr. Sproul this year and got to see some of the things that he's working on, and help talk through some of those breeding objectives of things that we're looking for, and seeing some of his work. So man, he's got some really neat things and colors I've never seen him before. So yeah, I think the next 5 to 10 years you're going to see a lot more introductions from us, from Dr. Sproul. So you know, I just wanted to highlight those four. We actually work with a lot of other breeders. We work with Dr. Slezak, who worked under Mr. Radler for a while. Dr. Slezak does a lot of work with polyanthas, and our Pretty Polly series of roses is from him, and they're phenomenal. We work with Julie Oberon and several other kind of smaller breeders that we bring their genetics in. So. All right, I want to talk a little bit now about like how we figure out what to introduce and when. One of the things that's really unique to Star is our trialing process. We take great pride and we invest a very large amount of money to trial our roses fully. And so I thought I'd kind of just walk you through a little bit of what that process looks like. And so I wanted to show you this. I'm not a great graphic design person, so these stars aren't all exactly where they're supposed to be, but I wanted to just give you a visual and kind of walk you through a little bit of the steps of how we decide whether a rose is good enough to be introduced into our catalog. So one of our huge initiatives at Star is that we want to make sure we introduce roses that perform really well all over the country. Especially with e-commerce and shipping roses all over the place. It's really important to us that the roses that we put our name on and our stamp of approval on do really well over the country. So hence we're trialing all over the country. So the little blue stars you see, one in Pennsylvania, of course, that's stars and plants. There's 2 blue stars in California. We have a trial field, we have 2 trial fields there. So the number one step is we take a look at it in those locations first. And actually, I'm going to go to the next slide because this kind of takes you through a little bit more. So really, before it even comes to us, it goes through breeder trials. Every breeder is a little bit different in how long and how much they trial and where they trial. In the case of Cortez, they will not send us a code until they've seen it for a minimum of 10 years, which may sound excessive, but if you talk to Thomas Prohl about why they do that, and he says you just you can't truly say that a rose is disease resistant unless you see it through several different cycles of weather. Which is a really fascinating and beautiful thing, and that's why Cortez is known for such disease resistant varieties because of their length of their trialing process before it even comes to us. And Mayana is the same. Mayana is anywhere from 5 to 7 years and sometimes even longer before it even comes to us. So roses is the long game. It's the long game. So when it comes to us in Pennsylvania, we consider Pennsylvania, we nicknamed actually Jacques Farrar, nicknamed it Rose Hell, because it has extreme disease pressure there. We are trying to kill them. The only thing we spray for is miticide, and that's just to keep RRD at bay. So other than that, it's no spray, no irrigation, no pruning. We literally plant them and let them go. We look at them for a minimum of 3 years in that situation and decide, okay, which ones are we going to take to the next level? At the same time, they're also in California. So once we decide, okay, this rose looks good, let's take it to the next step. We put it into TC because one of the most important parts of our breeding initiatives and also our production initiatives is clean stock. That's really, really important to us, and we invest a significant amount of money to ensure that we have the cleanest roses. So we actually TC everything before we send it to California. California does not deal with RRD. We have it in Pennsylvania. We have it in our trial fields, which is good because it's part of our trialing process. But we put it and we virus index it through TC. We send it to California. It gets produced in liners at Greenheart Farms and then goes into the field. You can see here in the picture, this is at the very bottom. You can see those little chunks of roses. That's one of our trial fields. That's our production trial. So in California, it doesn't matter how beautiful a rose is. If you can't produce it commercially and make money, it gets thrown away, which is really sad. Sometimes it's very hard to say no to a rose when it's so beautiful. But we look for like skips, which is like, it doesn't take. By the way, everything's tested en route in this field. We want to know, can we produce it commercially en route, which is really important to be able to produce so many roses in such short periods of time. So you can kind of see those fields there. So we go through production trials. There's production trials that are on liner growers. And then if we think, okay, we can produce it, it's got disease resistance, then we take it to the next step. Then we take it through container trials, which are like retail trials, because sadly, even if a rose is an amazing rose, if it doesn't look good at retail in a container and no one buys it, because unlike you folks who understand the beauty of roses and can wait and be patient for that beautiful bloom, not everybody can. In fact, 98% of people are impulse buyers. And so it's got to look good in the container as well. And that's part of those breeding objectives. Thomas Prohl likes to call it factory roses. We got to be able to produce a really beautiful rose, make money on it, and have people want to buy it at retail. So we put it through container trials, 1 gallon up to 3 gallon. We do comparison to other roses on the market to see, does it look better in a container? So we do that for 1 to 2 years. And then it also goes out to what we like to call the 8-corner offense. I'm going to go back to my map, which really it's a 14 corner offense now, which means then we send it out to, and we pay to have all of these roses trialed for a minimum of two full years to be able to collect other data, like how does it do in the deep, deep south of Florida? How's it going to do in Texas where it's humid and then really dry? How's it going to do in its winter hardiness? So we send it to Minnesota and Wisconsin. How's it going to do in the Intermountain West? How's it going to do in the, the rainy north, the rainy Pacific Northwest? And of course, how's it going to do in California, which is rose heaven, which usually, if it passes our trials to this point, it's absolutely gorgeous in California. So that's what's called our 8-corner offense. So minimum of 2 years in those trials. And those aren't even like awards trialing. This is before we even decide whether we're going to introduce something. Then we get into PI selection, which is like potential introduction. And then we send samples out to our key growers, which we send out about this next year, we're going to send out 123 boxes to 123 different commercial growers across the United States. Because if they can't grow it, it doesn't matter, right? It never makes it to retail. So they've got to like it, they got to trial it and look at it. And most of those growers want to trial for at least 1 year, but most of them like to do 2 years before they'll introduce it to the market. We also send out those PI selections to key employees. And then we make that selection. So you can see, and it's actually much more complicated than this, but hopefully this gives you a little like vision into the amount of work and money that we put into making sure a rose that has our name on it is going to be a great rose. So most people, I get asked this question all the time: how long does it take from the time you first see a rose to the time where like you can go out and buy it in the store? And it's anywhere from 7 to 15 years, just depending upon if it's a rose that came from offshore and we have to quarantine it for 2 years. You can't bring in roses from outside the United States. We pay to quarantine them for 2 years before we can even propagate or do anything. So anywhere from 7 to 15 years is the average time that rose has been trialed before you see it in retail. And then it's my job. This is then I get to do the fun stuff. It's my job to make money with roses. It's my job to, because it takes so long for a rose to say, oh wow, for Kristen to say, Heidi, this is a good rose. Go ahead and go figure out how to make money with it. So we have this bullpen, and we've had a lot of roses. Some roses we've sat on for a while because the market wasn't right. So it's my job to evaluate the market, what's happening, what's going on, what do people want, what colors are they looking for, and then looking across our portfolio of great genetics that Kristen has deemed worthy, and say, okay, we're ready for this one, and we're ready for this one, and we're ready for this one. Or, oh, you know what, we have one already like this, so we're going to give that to someone else. So we also do a ton of third-party work. A lot of roses that you buy from Monrovia, Proven Winners, Southern Living are our roses. And there's lots of other kind of smaller folks, and even Jackson and Perkins, and some great online sellers that we're working with, like Heirloom and Palatine and Menagerie and Life in Rose. Sometimes when they say they have something that's exclusive, we do exclusive work as well. It's also my job to work with licensees, and remember, we get 5 cuttings from our breeders, and from 5 cuttings we have to make millions of plants. So licensees and working with them in the build-up process is a really important step. So it's also my job to work with like e-commerce folks, home shopping networks, big box stores, IGCs, landscape wholesalers like Site One. I work on pre-releases, and I do a lot of the naming, patent work, and trademark work. So I get to do a lot of the fun stuff. So that's kind of like the next stage of product introduction is the placement of it. Next, we go into production planning. We have, we have a full-time person who their full-time job is just to do this, and I help him on the side, Jeff Kunovic, and he has a lot of experience in the rose industry. So he knows this industry inside and out. And so you can see here a little map of where our liner growers are. So liner growers are the small plant producers. They're the ones who are propagating and cutting, holding stock blocks and producing small plants. They sell some of those small plants directly to wholesale growers like a Pride's Corner Farms or an Verde. But they also produce for the field as well. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk a little bit about like some of the timing of that and to give you a little vision of how long this entire process takes. So for instance, this spring, 24, when you guys are out shopping for new roses, those roses were planted in the spring of 22 through the spring of 23. That production plan was set 1 to 3 years before that. So you can see kind of, our 2025 budded crop is already in the ground. It was planted this past spring. And I just got to last week see our 2025 own root planting is happening right now. You'll get to see a little video of that. So like right now I'm working on our 2027 budded crop production plan in trees and 2026 own root. So we have to look way, way ahead. So my job is to look at our portfolio and say, okay, 27, these are going to be our introductions, and we got to get it in production. We got to harvest budwood and all that good stuff. Alrighty. So I have a little video here. This is actually a link. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a rose field, a commercial bare root rose field, but it's really cool to see. So this video comes from Newhouse Farms. I'm gonna click on this, and it's going to take us to a website. I hopefully can bring this over and show you guys. So Newhouse Farms is in Wasco, California, and we made the strategic decision. It's been 5 years now that we pulled all of our garden roses out of Arizona because unfortunately there's some disease issues there. Newhouse Farms is the cleanest, best bare root rose grower in the world. And we have breeders who travel all over the world tell us this, and we believe it. Dan and Nancy are incredible farmers and incredible people. They're extremely passionate, they're smart, they have entomologists on hand, they just have the whole gamut. So I just wanted to show you a little bit this video from their website, and I hope I can make this nice and big so you can see it. Right. Hang on. We're gonna do that one in a second. Let me go back to my presentation here and see. There we go. So it's an incredible thing to see and witness this. There's not a whole lot of bare root rose growers in the United States, and almost all of the machinery that is used is custom built by Dan and Nancy. They do a lot of amazing things that make them the best rose grower. A couple of those things I just want to mention is they actually hold a VI block of material right there, which is a virus indexed block of roses. And they also work with Greenheart Farms. He's a large liner producer in California. And every third generation, we restart our genetics from TC material, which is tissue culture. And that's important because sometimes you get genetic drift. So we hold genetic, we have like a bank. You can think of it as we have a genetic bank and we restart them every 3 generations. So we are always working with virus index product. You may have seen in that video, I don't know if you saw, but one of the things that Dan and Nancy do is they solarize their soil. So part of our production planning has to take into account the time that they need to prep the fields before they even put them in. And that is to kill off all of the bad stuff in the soil. So we can genuinely say that we have the cleanest roses in the market. It's very expensive to restart and regenerate your roses every 3 generations, and to do this solarization, this prep. You're going to see another thing that they do that's really unique to them is drip tape. So there's no overhead watering. Now you see here in the planting, there is overhead watering pipes. Obviously, when they're first planting, they put the drip tape 9 inches below because the idea is they're growing roots. They're not growing tops, they're growing roots. And obviously, when you're putting a brand new plug in there, it's not 9 inches deep yet. So they do overhead water for about 2 weeks. And that's it. Then it gets lifted, and all water, nutrients, everything is delivered through that system. So that also keeps foliar diseases down as well, and also saves a ton of water. So I have another video. I'm sorry, I have another one, but this is really cool to see. And so I wanted to show you the harvesting, grading, and shipping of millions of bare root roses. So this has a little bit of reading on it too. So just so you know, there's kind of like some little things at the bottom of the screen to read. So I'm going to click on this, should bring us to this video as well. So Let me make this nice and big.
Stocked up in the roses here. These are all graded yet. These are outside the grade room, and here we are in the grade. Welcome to the cooler. The roses have been trimmed by variety, put into these pallets. This is where we will pull orders from by variety. Over here are the tree roses. Trucking and pruning the roses for the fiber pots. ready to get potted into the fiber pots.
All right. Let's see, let's get back to my, sorry. Let me get over to my presentation. Yeah, so I hope that kind of opened your eyes a little bit of rose harvesting and processing. It is extremely labor intensive and is not very automation adaptable. As you can see, if you've handled roses, you know how difficult they can be to handle. So it's a process that we've spent 126 years refining, and it's still very labor intensive. So it takes a lot to get those ready and out shipping in a very, very short period of time. And we're about to start harvesting in the next couple weeks. All right, let's go to the next. Want to talk just a little bit about trends. You know, when I first started at Star, the very first thing people were asking me is, Heidi, where did the fragrance go? Everywhere I went, Heidi, we want fragrance, 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 fragrance. It is definitely a huge trend right now, people looking for that. Color trends come and go, and it depends upon who's selling it and where it's being sold. But we do see, in general, the creams and the neutrals and the apricots and oranges are really hot. Of course, our best sellers, bar none, are still the reds and the dark pinks. But we do see an interest in it and a need for these colors. Also, people are really looking for that more romantic, old-fashioned high petal count rose. And just consumers loving to bring cutting and bringing that inside. And really COVID gave that to us, that trend, and it still continues. So that's where, you know, Scentables was born. Scentables is our collection inside of our Bloomables brand. And these are the varieties, remember we talking about earlier, how these were garden bred cut flower varieties. So these are roses are from a very specific breeding initiative. So these aren't florist roses. These are not roses meant to be grown under glass. Florists grow them all the time, outdoor cut flower growers, and ship them through the mail all the time. So they still are good for that, but they're designed to be grown outside and be able to be very successful in that way. These are highly fragrant with excellent disease resistance. So they have a large bloom, bud, and have reblooming cycles, unlike a lot of florist roses. So right now we have 16 varieties. You can see them here, including one that's brand new for 2024, which I'll talk a little more about later. But these are, we have so many more cool ones coming down the pipeline. So 2025 is going to be a big year for Scentables, which we're excited. So you'll see some of the big ones. You know, fragrance is the #1 thing that you want. Bolero is often considered to be one of the most fragrant roses on the market. It's also very compact, which is neat, which is really unique about it. But, you know, you're probably familiar with Princess Charlene de Monaco, Perfuma Earth Angel, Delish, Sweet Mademoiselle just won the fragrance award in the AGRS. So these are what we consider through all of our trialing data to be the absolute best, most fragrant garden roses, best performers out there. Okay, and I'm gonna wrap up with giving you guys a little sneak peek into the new roses that you're gonna find in retail in 2024. So 2024 really marks a big year for us at Star. You know, you heard me talk about our trialing process and how important it is for us to introduce roses that do well everywhere. But But one of the new initiatives that we're starting, and 24 is really the first year that you're going to see that, is also offering roses to the West Coast that are specific to them. They don't have the disease pressures that they do in the rest of the country. And so we do have had roses in our portfolio that we've been hesitant on because maybe they don't perform the best without a little bit of spraying on the East Coast, but absolutely knock it out of the park in drier climates. So you're going to see a few varieties. 24 is the first year that we've decided to do that, and we have a mechanism for marketing them in the right way. So making sure people understand which roses are the best for them. So you'll see a couple of those. So our first one that we're going to talk about is Romantica Balgam. This is a Mayon variety. This is a new introduction to our Scenttables program. So this one did well all over the country and has excellent disease resistance. Through all of our no spray trial partners, we've had influencers who've planted this in no spray gardens and have had next to zero disease issues. As you can see by the petal, very, very high petal counts, consistently over 100 petals, and it's on its own root, which is incredible. But the number one reason we chose this is it has such a unique fragrance. It smells like baby powder to me, or like fresh laundry just hung out on the line. It has that really, really fresh smell to it. So notes of grass, classic rose, and powder. And this Romantica Balgam is a hybrid tea, so this one does get taller. It gets up to 6 feet tall, 2 to 3 feet wide. So it's just that typical hybrid tea shape. In warmer climates like California, longer growing seasons, it could get taller than that, as we often see with some of these types of roses. So just a phenomenal performer. So you're going to see that in retail in 2024. The next one is another Mayon variety. Now, this is one of those ones I was telling you about that performs the best in a drier climate. You may be familiar with hot cocoa. This is kind of improvement on that. It has that real beautiful dusty undertone of mauves and cedars, and it's color changing. So it starts out like a brick orange, and then it finishes mauve, and the whole time it has that like dusty color, which is also another trend that we're seeing, that people want that kind of almost brown and cedar undertones. But as you can see by the size, this is really compact. So it's 2.5 feet high and 2.5 feet wide. And it also, to me, smells like cinnamon and cloves. It's light, but it's there. So it still has excellent disease resistance. It would need probably a spray program on the East Coast, but if you're in a drier climate, it's a top performer. In my yard, I've had this in Utah, and I have people stop and stare at this, because the color on this rose is truly unique. And of course, a photograph can never quite capture it. You have to see it for yourself. So if you're looking for a rose a little more compact, I'm really excited about Desert Sky. And there's going to be more colors of these types of roses coming down the pipeline. Cherries and champagne. So, one of the breeding initiatives that we're looking for are roses with reverse, where there's one color on one side and the other side of the petal is a different color. So this has a very typical high-centered bud. It's really unique because when it first comes out, it's red with a yellow reverse, and as it ages, it turns dark pink with the cream reverse. And so when you get these reblooming effect, you can see how it keeps setting buds in the background. You get this like multi-tonal reverse, which is really great. So it's really vigorous, has above average disease resistance for a hybrid tea. We still, like when we go to market, we are still gonna encourage people that it's better in drier climates. But you can see how compact it is. So a lot of the work and breeding that's being done, especially at Mayon, is to shorten hybrid teas. So this one stays under 3 to 4 feet, which is phenomenal. It's also very winter hardy on its own rootstock, and it does have a nice light sweet smell. So cherries and champagne. I promised you a new variety from Dr. Sproul, and oh my goodness, I love this rose. I like to call this the all year blooming peony. So as you can see by the bud, it has that really rounded peony shaped bud. And when it opens up, it's just so frilly. And it's a floribunda, and it has just so many buds per stem. You could literally just snip it off and have a whole bouquet. But the thing just blooms and blooms and blooms. Some of like Dr. Sproul's genes just do that. They just have such good current blooming in them. So yeah, and also has a really interesting lemongrass fragrance. So and it also works great on its own root. So this one gets a little bit taller, 3.5 to 4 feet. But the color is just striking on this. And in our trial gardens, when I go out and see it, you can just pinpoint this. There's something about Dr. Sproul's color and his flowers that is really electric that you can just pinpoint. Like Brickhouse Pink is the same way. It's like, wow, that's his right there. So just a wonderful introduction from him. The next two are some new Sunblaze varieties. So this is Sunblaze Watermelon. So Sunblaze is a really old brand. It's been around a long time, and we have better, more disease-resistant genetics now that Mayon has been working on. And so this is the best red. This is the most disease-resistant red miniature on the market. As you can see, the flowers are getting bigger too. So that's another breeding initiative, is we're trying to get the flowers on miniatures to be a little bit larger. And every time we get more and more, they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So watermelon, and the reason why we called it watermelon is, I don't know if you can kind of see it in this top picture, but when you pull the petal off, like the bottom of the petal is like kind of yellow and greenish, kind of like a watermelon rind. So anyway, that's where that name comes from. And the last one, this is bar none, besides Petite Knockout, is the most disease-resistant miniature on the market. This almost became a drift rose. The only reason I did it because I had one disease report from one trial site in the country. That's how strict we are with drift and knockout. But this thing has a phenomenal color. It's just an electric pink. So as you can see, pretty large flowers for a miniature. And the last two are very exciting. We have two new knockouts that we're introducing in 24. So Easy Beezy actually comes from our own breeding internally at Star Roses and Plants. Because we have so many amazing breeders that we're working with, Star Roses and Plants is shifting and focusing more on breeding shrubs and perennials. We do still dabble a little bit in some rose breeding, but because we have so many amazing genetics coming in, it's not as much. So this one has been in the works for a very long time. It's an improved yellow over sunny, and a much improved yellow. It stays yellow longer. There are more flowers. It's cleaner. It props better. Also holds that same light citrus fragrance that Sunny had. So, we called it Easy Beezy because, first of all, it's because it has that fragrance and it's a single petal. It's always covered in pollinators. So we're really trying to attract those consumers that care about their environment, where this is truly a rose that you don't need to spray, that's safe for your pollinators. And that will provide a nectar rectory all season long, right? Because it's blooming, has that recurrent genes in it, where you'll keep getting buds just over and over and over again. You can see how many buds are coming behind this. So that's a story that we're trying to tell with Knockout too, is that how safe they are for pollinators. Our final one, which is everyone's super excited about, is a new one from Mr. Radler, and that's Orange Glow Knockout. So this is our first true orange in the brand. And man, what an orange. This thing is high petal count, it's got a light fragrance. It has a medium green foliage, which is really tropical looking next to the orange. The number one reason we called it Orange Glow is because even on cloudy days, it just had this luminescent quality and was really bright, which is really important in retail, especially with a brand like Knockout, where if it's cloudy and rainy and someone's shopping at the garden center, you know, under an umbrella, it's like, wow, look how bright that is. So even in not great lighting, the thing is a phenomenal color. As you can see, it's a good bloomer. It gets a little bit taller for a knockout. It's 4.5 feet high, 3 feet wide. But you know, when we did grower trials with this, they just loved it. They were like, please tell us this is going to become a knockout. It's even before we made the final decision. But the last and final improvement here is it has incredible rust resistance. So in one of our trials on the west coast in Arroyo Grande, and one of the diseases we test for there specifically is rust. And you know, a lot of roses are completely defoliated by this time of year there, and this one just kept going. So we can safely say that this is bar none the most disease-resistant rose we've ever introduced, because we've never had a rust-resistant knockout before. So